What's up? I haven't seen you guys in a while. Vice versa. And this is Drama Notes, in case you've forgotten. My name is Porma. I am the host here. Today we're going to be talking about adaptations, K-drama adaptations. Specifically Family by Choice, which was adapted from the Chinese Go Ahead. And why, if you like it, that's valid. But if you don't like it and you can't quite explain why, maybe give my reasonings a chance. So, Go Ahead was this 2020 Chinese drama. I'm a big fan. Loved it when it first came out. Watched it another 3-4 times since then. And there are so many things I can say to critique the story. It has many flaws. But overall, it does such a great job with its thesis statement that the family you choose will always have your back, even when your family by blood may be the worst thing that ever happened to you. Go Ahead isn't perfect in the way it goes about telling the story. It definitely muddles up certain themes, but I have a lot of affection for that drama. And then 4 years later, Family by Choice comes out. It has Hwang In-yup, so I was really hoping for the best there. Guys, I don't like it. I couldn't keep watching it. I think I forced myself to watch the first 3.5 episodes, and it was an effort, and that is not what I want in my drama watching journey. And I realized that not everybody who's watching this drama is struggling like I am. I could see a lot of people online who were really pumped up about the OTP, Hwang In-yup and Jian Jian's characters. So that's Sana and Juwon. And that's great. That's great. Except I have Jian Jian and Ling Xiao in my head. And except in my mind, these two are very generic in their romance, while the OG versions of them were pretty standout in their own messy, chaotic way. But yes, I do understand why, to a lot of people who are just watching this drama and have never heard of or seen Go Ahead, this seems like a perfectly nice, cute, childhood friends to grown-up lovers story, right? They don't care that it's the generic version of the story. They don't care that a lot of the roughness of the characters was smoothed out, because that's what K-dramas tend to do. What they're seeing is working for them, and that's great. That's great. I have no interest in invalidating other people's enjoyment of dramas. I think this is a perfectly serviceable K-drama romance. 10 on 10 serviceable K-drama romance. My issue is really not about whether or not Family by Choice is a good K-drama. It's about whether or not Family by Choice is a good adaptation. Now, I have already said that I just watched 3.5 episodes of this drama and then noped out. So if you guys ended up watching much more or to the very end, and you come and tell me that I'm wrong about my conjectures and my accusations were wrong, and I didn't give the characters enough time to set things up and, I don't know, unfurl, well, I accept your point. You're right. But I'm not wrong. I gave them 3.5 episodes. I wasn't mad at this drama because it was not Go Ahead. It wasn't like a perfectly faithful copy. Family by Choice copies the beats of Go Ahead pretty well. It's pretty faithful. It has the broad beats of every character in line. But you know, it's like they kept the skeleton of the original story, but then changed the muscle and fat distribution all over the body. This is terrible. I was really bad at biology. I don't know if that makes sense. But it looks like a completely different beast. Even though technically they share the same framework. And let's talk about that. My biggest gripe in Family by Choice is with Sanha and Juwon's characters, though my critique can also be extended to some of the other characters in the drama. Before I dive into this, let me just say Family by Choice has done one thing really well, and it's the casting of the older generation. I was very impressed. I was totally feeling the feels that you were supposed to feel given the story. Their conflict was real. The emotional heft was there. The first episode was really working for me, guys. It's the second and third episode where they totally lost me. And that is sad because that is where Hwang In-yeop enters. And why him? That is a reference disappointed fans will recognize. So K-dramas have been adapting stories from other Asian regions for decades. This is nothing new. They take stories from Japan, they take stories from China, and they make it more polished, prettier, and then that is the version that all other countries around them end up importing at a much higher price. And the Hallyu model has often been, to some extent, about importing and making pretty borrowed products. Not always, just a portion of it, but they did it really well. I'm going to talk about a drama we have all heard of, which is Boys Over Flowers. It adapted the Japanese Hanayori Dango, and Hanayori Dango has been adapted in many other places, Taiwan, China. But it's Boys Over Flowers that's the most famous because it's also the most ostentatious. And here's the thing. For an international fan or a fan of Japanese dramas, it was still a novelty to see Hanayori Dango set in South Korea with its own, chaebol culture and just using tropes that are inherent to K-dramas. The Korean drama aesthetic was still new enough and novel enough that this was a fun thing to watch. And of course, adaptation was atrocious and they made so many things so much worse. But I don't think the adaptation at that time was quite that jarring, even though the original Hanayori Dango and Boys Over Flowers didn't have that many years between them. However, when the Thai adaptation, F for Thailand, came out, that was a proper adaptation. Because even though, again, it kept most of the beats of the drama the same, it just took out all of the flab, took out a lot of the toxicity, made actions of the toxic man-child hero have real consequences, gave the heroine a genuine backbone, made the friends a lot less passive. It just did so many great things. Things that the original Hanayori Dango, but more importantly, the K-drama adaptation, Boys Over Flowers, had been criticized for by fans for decades at this point. It's like the writers really internalized all of that critique. And they genuinely did. There are interviews out there where they have extensively talked about how careful they were when crafting the story so that it doesn't become a situation where the heroine, who is from a much poorer background, gets bullied into or guilted into a relationship with the hero. But the most important factor in all of this is the time elapsed between Boys Over Flowers and F for Thailand. There were a couple of other adaptations like Meteor Garden and I think one other adaptation in other countries. But we can largely ignore them because they were not as culturally relevant as F for Thailand was. Genuinely, Twitter at the time was so much fun. Now let's talk about another K-drama remake, A Time Called You. It was adapted from a Taiwanese original drama called Someday or One Day. The original came out in 2019 and the remake came out in, oh boy, Was it 23 or 24? It's the end of 24, and already everything that happened in the first half feels like last year to me. The correct date will be here. You can see that there is, again, just a gap of like 3 or 4 years. And this is simply not enough time for a remake to be valuable to the audience. Not only have cultural mores not evolved much during that period, which at least would have given you a new perspective to tell the story from, there was also not a sufficient need to prettify this story. Someday or One Day has the kind of noir time traveler vibe that just doesn't benefit from having a Pinterest background. There are stories where South Korea's cinematography, the kind that is used in dramas, can really benefit. There are those stories. But this was not one of those genres. So what exactly was added except a new set of actors acting out the same story? And again, I understand the human need to listen to the same story again and again and again. We look up tropes and repeatedly read the same tropes again and again through like 50, 100 books. I am very much a genre fiction reader, and I have read the trope of suspicious rivals to comrades at arms to lovers so many times. I know that doesn't sound like a... It's not enemies to lovers. They were never enemies. I don't really enjoy enemies to lovers. I do enjoy... Not sure what you are. Let me figure that out. But hey, you seem competent. Hey, you seem competent. Let's be friends. Let's work together. Yay. And then, you fall in love. Love that. And we'll keep watching it for many, many years until I tire of it. I don't know when that will happen. So yeah, I get that. I love the friends to lovers trope, which is why Go Ahead is such a huge favorite of mine. I love the contract marriage trope. I have read so many, a ridiculous number of stories with contract marriages, relationships, etc. So yeah, I perfectly understand the urge of wanting to read the same story with just different characters again and again and again, but that exactly is the crux of the matter. You're not reading the same story because every time you change the characters involved, you're changing the story. In broad strokes, the same tale can take place in 2 different places to 2 different sets of people. There can be lots of coincidences between them, same trope, same sequence of events can play out, but it's happening to 2 different people. And because they are 2 different people, their reactions are different, their personalities are different, what they are saying to each other are different. And a reader/media consumer like me loves reading, all versions of that. Give me that same thing happening to like 30 other groups of people. But the way this is fun for me is if their personalities are distinct, if their situations are different, if their family and friend and work dynamics are different. If it's all the same, it is not fun. So what I'm saying is, it's never the same story. Wanting to read that same trope 100 times does not mean you want to read the same story 100 times. But with adaptations like these, where it's very faithful, you're basically retelling the story while keeping like 90% of the factors similar. The story has to follow certain exact beats, which means that the characters' motivations also have to hew close to the originals, otherwise those beats don't make sense. So you're basically telling the same story, following the same beats, with different actors. Okay, now for some people, even that is great. They like it. They are never going to watch the original. They want it in Korean. So you get A Time Called You. You get A Family by Choice. Here's the problem, though. In both cases, the adaptation writers were not satisfied with just sticking to the beats of the drama. Just like the creators of F4 Thailand, they also wanted to change and improve certain things. But with Family by Choice, the changes the writers made were not based on any real deep thought. Again, I'm 3.5 episodes in, so if this entire long rant is misplaced, please let me know. I am willing to acknowledge if I'm wrong, but I don't think I am. The changes they made were often superficial or reacting to criticism that was superficial. The first and most obvious thing is casting Jian Jian. You see, the heroine of the original drama, Go Ahead, Jian Jian, played by Tang Song-yoon, was kind of iconic.
我李尖尖，今天来例假啦！
In that, if you watched Go Ahead, you were not going to forget her character. You could forget all of the other characters around her. She would stand out. Jian Jian is the exact opposite. If you watch Family by Choice and walk away from it, and a year later try to recall who was in it, you might actually remember a lot of the older generation actors. But I am willing to bet the one actor you will not remember is Jian Jian. I generally try not to be mean about castings in a drama, but Jian Jian is such a corporate casting decision. It's maddening. For one thing, the way not just her, but the two boys played by Hwang In-yup and Bae Hyung-sung, Sana and Hae-jun, all three of these look the same from their teenage years to their late 20s, which is when they are reunited. And they behave the same, they have exactly the same amount of polish, and their dynamic barely changes. Bae Hyun-sung and Hwang In-yup are both excellent actors. And they've been given characters that have to do a lot of emotional heavy lifting. Both boys go through a lot of tragedy in the drama. So again, good casting decision there. But the choice to cast an actress who's supposed to be the heart of the story and to basically choose somebody with the emotional expression bandwidth of a clock face, I don't understand the choices that were made here. The actor is trying her best. The problem is with the people who cast her for a character she was not equipped to play. If you've watched Go Ahead, if you've watched Tang Song-yoon in any drama before, you know what she's going up against. To be fair to Ju-won, her character simply has not been written with as much depth as Jian Jian's had been in Go Ahead. Her character is, she's a human being. Yeah. Okay, I am being really mean. She's a perfectly serviceable version of this character, but they have also diminished her so much. It's not just the fact that she is model pretty even as a teenager, it's the fact that this character's teenage version doesn't feel like a teenager, she feels like a toddler. Like the child actor who was playing the same character had more maturity than the teenage version of Ju-won. I don't know, guys. The choice to make these actors just be the most Instagram filter version of themselves is such a disservice to the original characters that were written. I feel especially crushed by the Sanha character, who's supposed to be the K-drama version of Ling Xiao, played by Song Wei-long. Now, objectively, Song Wei-long is a decent actor, but Hwang In-yup is a far superior, far more experienced actor. Unfortunately, the writers of the adaptation have decided to change his character motivations to a degree where watching Sanha interact with Juwon became this exercise in frustration for me. The dynamic that Ling Xiao had with Jian Jian in Go Ahead was one of childhood friends growing up pretty much under the same roof. Ling Baba and Li Baba, which were, their own two dads who were neighbors as well as friends, were sort of like co-parenting and bringing them all up together. It becomes relatively obvious that teenage Ling Xiao has a crush on Jian Jian or has started to have a crush on Jian Jian, but he is not really focusing on that. He's just in that space where he's very grateful to have this family because he knew that without Jiang Jiang and her father, Li Baba, enveloping him and his dad into their family, his dad and he would have been living a very different, far more depressed life. And he's always very grateful for the amount of affection and family love he's been able to enjoy over the years because of that determined little girl who pulled him into her family and her father who has just the biggest heart and wants to help and feed everyone he can. There was just so much gratitude and protectiveness in Ling Xiao's character. Like, teenage Ling Xiao was very sorted. He was a studious kid. He was older than the other two, which were Jian Jian and Zi Qiu, played by Zhang Qincheng. He needed to take care of them. He needed to keep these two crazy heads like sorted, protect them, make sure they didn't get into trouble. Like, his mission in life was simple. He needed to keep his family together. Ling Xiao was not at that point calculating in his head the degree of separation between him and Jiang Jiang so that he can pursue her at a later date. He had a crush on her, but his primary motivation was keeping her safe, keeping their family safe and together. And like, the most that he did was try to make sure that she didn't barge into the boys' rooms or, try to sleep over in their rooms like she'd been doing since she was a kid. Those were the aspects that were coming out in their teenage years, and that was it. A decade later, when a much more broken Ling Xiao comes back from just the worst emotional abuse a parent can dole out to their child, he locked on Jiang Jiang like he needed her to survive. That was not a healthy place. It was also not the same boy who had left 10 years back. Drastically different guy. This guy, while he was suffering under his mom's extreme behavior, had idealized Jiang Jiang to a certain extent.
你一个人也可以活得很好，你有很多朋友，我不行，我没有，我必须有你，你必须在。
哥，你的生活不只是有我呀，你没有别的喜欢做的事儿吗？那你在新加坡除了照顾陈婷阿姨和妹妹，还有上学，你都做什么？
想你，想家，做白马。
Now, all of this was not resolved or dealt with in the drama, but the drama did do a good job of showing us exactly what the mental trauma was and what its consequence was on Ling Xiao's character. It is at this point in his late 20s when he's come back and he's determined to win Jiang Jiang because he's kind of clutching at her to love him and be with him, and this is how he'll survive because she had rescued him when he was a child. She can rescue him again. It's a very unhealthy state of mind. And the reason I love Go Ahead is because Jian Jian recognizes that it's an unhealthy state of mind. She listens to him talk about her like he can't survive without her. And her response isn't to melt. Her response is to start crying because she realizes that his spirit's been broken. I'm telling you all of this just to get to the point that when Ling Xiao was a teenager, he would never have ever told Jian Jian that they were not really a family because they were not related by blood. All of the members of this found family set were constantly being told by other people that they were not a real family because they were not related by blood. This was the enemy's chant. This was never what they would have said to each other. The only thing they ever said to each other was that they were a family because they chose each other. They were a family regardless of what anyone says. And so for Sana, teenage Sana, who has gone through apparently the same arc that Ling Xiao had, to tell Jian Jian that no, we are not a family.
우리 가족 아니야.
Because we are not related by blood, was such a betrayal of the original theme. Their teenaged versions had actually been in a really healthy mental space. They had had years of good parenting from Li Baba and also sporadically from Ling Baba whenever he wasn't at the police station. And these were kids with like steady, good heads on their shoulders. They had been equipped with emotional maturity thanks to the love that the family had for each other. For apparently this same set in Family by Choice, but the title says Family by Choice, but your main character, your main male lead says, no, we are not family because we are not related by blood, is just such a betrayal of the thesis. I just cannot get over it. The fact that you have Hwang In-yeop's character trying to draw that line so early on clearly indicates that the drama was like, listen, these two are getting together, so we need to make it clear very early on that they are not actually siblings. Yeah, we know they're not siblings. They are neighbor kids. The only somewhat for incest conflict that you have in this drama is between Zi Qiu and Jian Jian, which in this case is between, what's his name? Hae-jun and Ju-won. Because Hae-jun was adopted by Ju-won's dad, pretty much. So that is where you have something of a sibling relationship. This was honestly something that I found tripped up a lot of people because all of these kids were growing up together, and maybe it's just a matter of cultural differences. I've grown up in a country where neighborhood kids kind of growing up together, going into each other's houses, being scolded by each other's parents and, sort of brought up in like a community way is not a bizarre concept. I didn't get brought up that way. However, anytime we had like big cousinly gatherings, we would have lots of kids who were completely unrelated to us, but we would all kind of be scabbed together and just treated like we are everybody's children. This is simply not a struggle I ever had with this drama, but I know that some people apparently did struggle with it. Like I said, the only for incest situation that they had with Zi Qiu and Jiang Jiang's character was also, I thought, was dealt with so well. Zi Qiu didn't ever feel in any romantic way towards Jiang Jiang. But just like Ling Xiao, he also had 10 years of a horrible time away from the family he wanted to be close to. And also just like Ling Xiao, once he came back, he just wanted to be a legal part of the family. And so both boys kind of locked in on Jian Jiang as the way to get into the family in a legal way. This entire concept where you start seeing your childhood friend in an entirely new light and you see a possibility of, finally having the family, but like legally recognized by society that you've always craved. It makes a lot of sense that this would be bubbling up in the brains of these two boys who have been through a lot of trauma, but not in the brains of the teenage versions of these boys who were really properly emotionally supported. Do you know what I mean? Like, their teenage versions would not be the ones drawing those lines, because it would almost be like cutting themselves out of the family. Teenage Sanha should not have been telling Jiwon that we are not a real family. To my mind, there was no need to dismantle this aspect of Sanha / Ling Xiao's character. And there was also no way of preserving his arc once you did something like this. His obsession with this found family is what kept him alive, pretty much, when he was away from them. You took something that cropped up in the broken mind of a deeply hurt man and put it in the head of his teenage self, who shouldn't have been thinking along those lines. Again, not because it's morally or ethically wrong, it's not. Because it didn't make any sense given where his character was. They spent all day long insisting that they were a family. At no point does it make sense that the male lead here is going to be like, we're not a family. Okay, I think I've belabored the point enough. So I think this is not a good adaptation for many reasons aside from this. A big one being, somehow they managed to make this story boring, even though they crushed like 40 episodes into 16 and should have had more than enough material. But yeah, let me know if after episode 3 it suddenly gets exciting, and if I should continue, and if I'm completely wrong about Sanha's character arc and that it makes total sense and they have somehow made it work. If that is true, I need to know, and I guess I will go and watch it as punishment. Anyway, final words. Adaptations. Please stop doing them when so little time has passed since the original was created. All international fans, but also a huge chunk of the domestic Korean viewership are very used to watching these dramas coming out of other Asian countries. They've already seen this stuff. There is some value to be had to have that story being told in your own language, but not really for international viewers, because we'd seen the better version. But I think there's more value to be had if you make that adaptation once you have something genuinely different to add to it, a new perspective, a new character dynamic, something that was clearly missing in the original and would benefit the story to add to it, the way F4 Thailand did. Wait is what I'm saying. I understand money is tempting, but like, give it 8 years at least. Stop making these adaptations in just like 3 or 4 years. It's getting ridiculous. I am tired of having some hope and that hope being completely crushed once the Korean version comes out. And also, not every story benefits from cinematographic polish. Okay, I am done with my ranting. I shall, close the book, and I'll go away now.